Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We crack the code so you don't have to.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. We're back with an incredible guest, Kyle Bogucki. Did I get it right, Kyle?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me back, Ronnie.
It's great. The last time we spoke, we discussed your journey from a small town in Grand Rapids, Michigan, to attending college in Erie, Pennsylvania, and playing water polo. And then your early days of starting out, I talk to so many people and I hear those stories about them delivering newspapers when they were 7, 8, 9, 13. But you actually went and worked at a restaurant by the age of 15, doing everything in the restaurant, which is a whole level above, I think, in many ways than a newspaper route. Like that is seriously hard work. But I'm amazed by your journey and your business. So you're the founder of Black Shepherd Strategies, and you're based in Washington, D.C., which is one of the biggest markets to work. You've got New York and L.A. and Washington, D.C., and maybe even Chicago. But you've built a company with a loyal following. And I think one of the discussions we had was the vast majority of your work comes from referral, which is not an easy thing to achieve. So I appreciate your business and what you're doing. Tell our listener what it is that your business does.
Yeah. So Black Shepherd Strategies, we started as in my basement office as a freelance graphic design company. And I've grown into a more of a business model where I can come out to agencies and bigger companies and provide a dynamic list of services backed with 18 years of experience here in the PR space in DC, on multiple different creative projects. Basically a one-man army with a handful of contractors that are ready to step in at any time.
And Kyle, let's talk more about that. But I don't think we discussed it in my last conversation with you. So you found an opportunity when you were in college to move to Washington, D.C. for your first job. But one of the things I forgot to mention and bring up, you made that transition from college to the workplace in Washington, D.C. during one of the most challenging economic periods in the history of the United States. And this was the financial and housing crisis of 2008. So your timing was almost a disaster in many ways, right? But you made that transition.
I was lucky. I can't tell you how many times I'm lucky. Mercyhurst, I was on 4 years and 2 terms. So we weren't on semester model. We were on trimesters.
Right.
So I had 2 terms. So I was actually out in March of 2008, entering the workforce. So I had about a 2-month jump on the rest of my ilk of graduates and across the country. Right. It's not just the people at my school, but everybody, all those marketable students graduating kind of want to go in the workforce. I had already 2 months in, 2.5 months in, and then the recession hits, and I'm seeing friends that the opportunities aren't there. Things, and that's kind of the first taste of kind of the current stature, right? Like things haven't been strong since. But I made it through my company's rounds of layoffs. I saw the impact, directly in the office when a company goes from 110 to about 70. That's not nothing.
And usually that last in is the first to go. So I'm not sure what it was about you that allowed you to stay, but that's incredible alone. Just that. Yeah,
I was a part of a small creative team that supported a large agency, and it was a lot of the accounts. On the account side, that it seemed to, where contracts kind of didn't get signed or projects didn't get started off because people weren't sure of where things are going.
Right.
But there was still the need for the creative support across the firm. So fortunate, I made the cut. I think I made 2 cuts while I was there. Because times weren't great. It wasn't just one time. I was I think that lasted at least over a year. So I was lucky to secure a spot and grind and be good enough to keep on task.
And what's fascinating, in the industry I worked at that time, it was in the home building industry, and we laid off about 10,000 people in 2.5 years roughly. But we started that process in December of 2006. So by the time Lehman Brothers went out of business in September 2008, we were really deep into it. And you're right, it was just a weird, difficult time. But you made it through, which is incredible, which probably speaks to the term that we mentioned in the last discussion about that grind.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend of mine that always tells me this. She's a marketing expert. And she says, Ron, the best time to market is through those periods of downturn, because when it comes back, you want to be very well positioned. And so I suspect a lot of those companies probably had that in mind. Like, no, we can't, we might be trimming back, but we need to make sure we're ready for the rebound.
That's right. It's a little bit of a chess game, and kind of keeping your eyes open to what is actually going on. Right, you kind of get into the day to day of what your tasks are, your projects, or what your email inbox looks like. But being aware of the buzz of the company, and kind of who's running around the halls and what conversations are happening, and how to stay relevant, so that you stay in the brightest light when they're making those toughest decisions, so that that there's no question to. Now, all of that stuff was out of my control. All those, I was the junior designer, but I was still on my best behavior, so that at least I wasn't actively giving them a reason to kind of put me on that block. But
so what inspired you to branch out on your own? So it sounds like you were at a great agency doing wonderful work for some really great clients. And I think you started the business in 2016. What propelled you, with roughly 8 years of experience, to go off on your own and work from your garage to build your vision of a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I, throughout my career, I always maintained a portfolio of clients. In the PR world, I can't technically show most of my work, right? It's all under NDAs, and it's all quiet. But if I wanted to grow, if I wanted to market myself, I needed things out there that I could show.
Right.
So to fill that gap, I had to find clients and outside work, and even for the sake of raising money, right? You're a junior designer in a big city, like you're not making the most money. So there's a lot of motivating factors. So I worked through about 4 different agencies at that time. I think I had about 15 years of experience pulled in, and I had just finished a web development class where I could do front end development on top of all of the other creative work. And I said, let's give it a shot.
Right.
Let's see what happens. I'm young enough. I didn't have any kids at the time. The risk is minimal, and I still have a great network if something happens, but let's do it. So I actually did about 2 years, year and a half, when I first started it, made it official, right? I made it an official LLC. I had a good enough bank of portfolio of clients that kept me busy enough.
No.
Obviously but it was a jumping point, and I had to take that leap.
And Cal, did you have to work a regular job and start the second business? Because a lot of people
it just wasn't an official, right? So
that makes sense.
I had these clients while I had full-time jobs, and I was, you have to look at the math, and then you kind of have to ignore the math,
right?
Because you're like, I'm not going to make the same. Right. And then there's, health insurance and all those other things that factor into it. At an office for a little while, a dedicated space. But you just try it, right? It was just give it a shot. Well,
and a lot of people ask, in my response to starting a business is, why not? What do you have to lose? You've got to make sure you cover your bills, your living bills, but why not?
Yeah. It was a calculated risk. And I had a couple mentors, one of my stronger mentors that I'm still, very super close with. And, he kind of had a really good temperature read of where I was at too. So I had a strong outside voice kind of saying, give it a shot. Right. You can do this. And if not, we'll figure it out. Like, you're not going to do this alone. And I think that made a huge difference. Just having knowing that someone else there is not only rooting for you, but will help you kind of figure it out if it doesn't work out.
Right.
But go ahead.
I was going to say, tell me about your breadth of clients. So and I'm just going to go through some of this and you can fill in the details, but public affairs, digital advocacy, you're working with national security contractors and nonprofits and NGOs. I don't think most people know what an NGO is, but you're working through consumer goods. Like your breadth of service and impact is just incredible.
That's right. One of the things I realized at a young age, and why I thought this was a reality, it could be a reality, is with design and creative work, everybody needs it at some point in time. Whether it's a business card, a PowerPoint deck, a website, the opportunity is always out there. It's finding the people that are willing to hire you to do the work. So, and that's where I've kind of expanded. Having worked in the agencies across industries, like telecommunications and energy and startups, and the B2B business of cybersecurity clients trying to work with other agencies, or trying to capture government contracts, the B2B B2G work, trying to be subs or primes on any of this big government, these military contracts, the defense contracts, essentially. It's being able to work across the board. I brought that with me because it's the goals are the same, or their audiences are different. I've expanded, understand the various audiences, but their goals are always the same. And it's always somebody, the clients, sometimes they aren't sure what they need to do to get it done.
Right.
And to be able to have that easy conversation to say, here's how we can lay this out without coming across as overbearing or controlling, right? Or condescending, where it's, hey, you can learn about this. I can teach you about this, so that you not only ask me what to do, but you know how to talk about it. You know how to talk to your leaders about it. We know how to make you look good to your bosses when we succeed.
That has to be an art form, because I've seen so many organizations that go into a client and they're so determined, not necessarily to make them look bad, but they want to be the smartest one in the room. And it comes across a little aggressive at times. And so what you just described, and helping to build that rapport and helping them understand that you're there to support them and make them look good. What you just described is incredible. And I think a lot of people gloss over that in their analysis of their business and their interactions with other businesses.
The trust is a big thing when it comes to being a successful entrepreneur, business, running a business, and having your clients trust what you're doing, not just listening and taking it in. I've been on some, challenging creative calls where, I've heard pitches that are, rather pointed and they're tough, because you can hear the client, you can see if they don't understand it,
right?
But they're taking it and they're saying, this is the way we're going, I guess. There's not a lot of confidence in it. So, softening up that conversation, bringing it down to a level where you're not talking in any direction, but directly to them, so that they can just say, I get it.
Yes.
I can also know about it. And I trust what you're doing is the right thing, because I get the pros and the cons, or I get why we're doing this approach. And also not, sticking anyone to, a forced contract where, they don't know where those dollars are going, and they don't see the value. They don't understand the value, right? Where we're like, I know I'm going to do something for you, but if they don't know what that means, it gets tough.
Now, and so I want to do this. I want you to, wherever you don't have an NDA, tell us about some of your successes. Like, what do you have an organization to achieve? And you don't have to mention them by name, but I think that'd be so important given the range of work that you provide. But there was a concept that I read in some of your work, and it's what you describe as white label partnerships with other PR firms. Now, if you're in retail, a lot of retailers would know what a white label is or private label. Mm-hmm. But how have you created that kind of an opportunity in working with other PR firms? That's really fascinating how you described it.
Podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit andycostafilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leads.
Yeah, so it's, I'm not out here for my awards, right? I love what I do, and I love the people that I work for. I'm very fortunate for all the clients and great people that I work for. But I don't come in and try to bring an ego or attention to my work. It's about the mission. It's about the goals. It's about what the deliverable needs to be. So yeah, there's of the agencies and companies that I support around this city, there's a large swath of it, which is my work, but no one has any idea. Right. And I don't care. I don't mind. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm out for, to be the most popular designer in this city. I'm out there because I love doing this kind of work. And I bring that kind of energy to, even the smallest project where, no one's going to dread sending me a social graphic. It's not my bread and butter, but it's with the, the prevalency of social work and social media and stuff, it's, still being able to take those opportunities and say, I'll take care of it for you.
Right.
But so, some of the, the successes is, I've got clients, all of my clients, whether it's an agency that I support just as an extra pair of hands, or there's a firm where I'm the creative capability. They look to me to bring those ideas and something new. And having coffees, as I've learned, having virtual coffees with these people and say, hey, this is what I've been doing for you for the last 2 years, but hey, here's other things that I've been doing for other clients and bringing in new ideas. It's those new ideas that spark growth within some of my strongest clients and longest term clients. I did a dashboard project for one of my think tank clients, and it brought all this data to life that they've been working years to compile. And they were really excited, right? But they didn't know how to make it. They didn't know, what the possibility was, to the point where, the concepts were also the ideas. Hey, you have this, let's use your data to do this. And, kind of coming somewhere in the middle versus like, what do we do? And me just kind of forcing them. There was a lot of idea generation, a lot of collaboration, where the product wasn't something I made. It was something we built together. I had developers make it, but the functionality and how we tell the story of this data, they were very much a part of it, and their data team and people that don't normally get out and they're just crunching numbers, being able to even give them a voice to say, how do you want your data represented? And it kind of, it brought a little more buzz to the client, to the team, to say, hey, we're all in this, and it's not that hard, right? It's not, this looks daunting, but it's not that bad.
It's funny because I've been having similar conversations with one of my clients, is that it feels bigger, but it's not as complicated as you might recognize. The good thing is you can say that, Kyle can say that, and Ronnie can say that, because we have the experience of having done it. For them, it's a really big hill to climb. But because you've done it before, you can help them navigate it, and it's easier than they think. They just need to understand it. So I appreciate that. The other thing I appreciate, Kyle, in talking to you, is that I think a lot about my journey, and oftentimes I've been the guy behind the guy. In an organization, from an organizational standpoint, just so I can point to great successes, but I'm not necessarily the face of it. So behind the scenes, we have to make that big event execute well. And it sounds like you're doing much the same. So you can probably walk around Washington, D.C. and look at either a campaign or an event and think, I had a hand in that, and I had a hand in that one too, which is rewarding.
That's right. Well, and a lot of my successes we sort of talked about is from the referrals, right? So, when I'm working with a client, a director on an account, and they have their hierarchy above and below them, we want to succeed on the projects. But again, that director, the person I'm working with, I want them to succeed too. Right. I'm looking through multiple lenses where, if they succeed and they change jobs, then, I'm still the person that helped them to succeed and carried on. Or if they succeed and someone says, hey, I've got something, again, there's not a week that goes by that I don't get an email from a stranger that says, hey, you work for somebody. I haven't met most of my clients, by the way. Never on face, right? I've got to start making like trips this year to kind of see these people I work with. But that's just how it works, is, if you work close enough with people and if you treat them nice enough, and help them succeed and understand what they're doing, then it starts. It's the beginning of a nice relationship, personal relationship and professional.
And then COVID was an opportunity for you. My understanding is that you grew during COVID.
Yeah. So I was the head of I started the creative capability at one of my firms, in a smaller company here in DC. And, we were very much kind of a butts and seats kind of company, not really strict, but with a little bit of flexibility. But, we had a lobbyist team that, was up on the Hill regularly meeting with congressmen on behalf of clients. And they lost that capability. They couldn't go to the Hill. So, we were making the one pagers and the flyers and the talking points, and, those messages weren't getting delivered on behalf of our clients. Okay. Our lobbyist team wasn't very digital savvy, right? They weren't digital first, I should say, right? They understood the digital world, but it wasn't on the first mindset. But what we turned around doing, and it's not crazy, but we started just doing digital landing pages, so that, hey, have a link to put the stuff out to that you can even update, right? It's not printed, it's not final. So even if you have to refine it, but arming them with digital tools to kind of continue up their work. That was also kind of where I started this white label approach, right? Where we were a creative team within a PR firm, right? But we had to generate more business because things were going around. So we found other agencies that didn't have creative teams, and we became their white label.
That's fantastic.
Creative team. So we found partnerships and media companies and other agencies around the country where and immigration law firms or whichever. We found ways to insert ourselves into other teams and be that team and market ourselves as such. And where I was even interfacing with clients, right? I had email addresses just to kind of make that conversation easier through other clients.
So real quick, you had their email address is what you're saying. And that's important for people to distinguish.
Established me an email address so that, at least the client didn't think, it just didn't make a jarring experience, right? We didn't want the client to kind of think anything others, but nonetheless, we were at a completely different company. So it was just finding opportunities. What can we do to kind of stay busy?
And that tell owners that as well. So not just that piece, but this is very similar. The concept of bartering is a really good concept today. So if I provide a specific service and you provide something different, how can we collaborate? Which is, again, very much like what you said. If I can support you, or we can exchange services without exchanging cash. So if I provide a service that you need and you provide one, we exchange those services so that we can support our growth and partner together. But
that's right. And finding opportunities. The biggest thing is being able to say yes. For teams that don't have the creative agency, right? For them to say, yes, we can still build you that website, right? Because then it allows them to do their PR campaign that they were going to try pitching anyways, but if they couldn't capture the rest of that proposal.
And that's so true. If you're competing against a bigger company that has all of those different departments and groups in-house, but like you said, you can go to a potential client and say yes, and then they call Kyle and say, Kyle, I need your help. You're my department for this specific service, right?
That's it. And I partner. I've actually been on a couple of my longtime colleagues that are starting their new companies. We're in a partnership agreement for that very reason, so that they can say yes to those kind of projects, and I can be that expert, as needed, but also access to me grants them access to web developers and videographers and content specialists and strategists and a media company. So through me funnels the strengths of a full agency, right? And it's not just a freelance designer making the one pagers. There's a lot of strength behind me.
And the neat thing for a growing company, but we spoke about fractional positions in the prior discussion, but I want to end kind of with this note. So you take a smaller growing company, instead of them going out and trying to become experts in areas that they're not experts in and hiring maybe a CFO or an HR or a marketing department, it would be more cost effective to come to you and say, you're now my marketing department. You're an external company, but you're my fractional marketing department. I think a lot of business owners need to recognize what the value that they get from a level of expertise and going to this model versus trying to build their own in-house, especially in the early days of their growth.
Yeah. I mean, it costs everything when you're starting a new business, but you still need to have access to those resources. Right. And that's kind of where we fit nicely, because we're not under most of my clients, retainers scare clients. Correct. Because that's dedicated money to something you don't know if you're going to need all the time. Right. And And that's a tough conversation to have. People try to, force clients into that kind of hold because they need to have that assurance. I don't have retainers with my clients.
Right. Oh, wow.
And I'm in a really funny position, and it's odd that, all of my clients could decide to call me tomorrow or not call me tomorrow.
Sure.
And I would have no work. But I've grown to the point where the ebbs and flows of all my clients, create a pretty steady sea for me where things are pretty flat. But none of them are locked into it. But that's why I have to go above and beyond on my service, on my communication, and the deliverables to say, hey, I'm a value at all times.
Right.
But I'm convenient for you, right? I'm easy for you, and I allow you to make easier decisions rather than tougher ones about
That's a huge business model risk, because I've implemented some software systems, and a lot of systems back in the older days, I think a lot have moved to this model now, but back in the older days, they'd have you on a 12-month contract, right? So you have to pay someone from you on a 12-month contract, so you have to wait till the end of that contract. Some of the other newer models, you're not on a contract at all. They require you to give 30-day notice just from a functional standpoint. But I could have them leave at any time, but I didn't, because like you, they focused on the quality of their service and their outcomes, and they were incredible systems. So they knew just based on their product that I would stay because the product was good.
That's right. And and that's it. And being able to, bring the excitement and bring the new ideas, bring consistency and professionalism. Right. At the end of the day, they need to trust that I'm going to get their work done for them in a timely manner. Right. DC works pretty fast, and even markets, all over. Communication, the way that people are talking to each other is fast. I need to be able to turn things around quickly and stay up to pace with them, and so that they can keep going and not be a disruption. And having been in the agency world, I know what those disruptions do to those teams, and also how they affect the people that add to that disruption. So I know the risk, and I know, and I always push this, to be part of that fluid process. Nice. And also kind of making sure everybody's happy. And so,
Kyle, we have about a minute left. You've given the audience and the listeners so much information to think about as they build their business, whether small business or a large business. But there are a couple of points that I'd love for you to end on as a business decoded tip, like just your model, your concepts. And I think I mentioned this before, but you focused on collaborative and agile from a concept perspective. You mentioned that scaling is not just about the numbers, it's about impact and providing high quality support. And then another one you mentioned is you've got a strong, trusted network of professionals. So if you had to give any final concepts and tips on for business leaders of all size companies, what made Kyle? What made Black Shepherd Strategies the company you've become?
To be honest, I put myself out there, right? I knew that there was a risk to exposing myself. There's a little bit of vulnerability to kind of get out there, but putting myself out there, finding connections, finding people that I jive with, people that supported me, that I could support, at least for the starting point, right? And just to grow and to have a place to be, I had to reach out. So I had to, get over some of those mental hurdles of embarrassment or cold calls, but just expose yourself and have those virtual coffees and connect with people. Think of, everything as an opportunity, big or small. Right. Whether it's a brochure that turns into a website, or a logo that turns into, doing a whiskey label bottle for, a client, right? Small opportunity is an opportunity that can be grown into something bigger. If you treat it right and if you do it well. Right. The other thing is, your products, my products plus my connections, right? Bring those opportunities. So the more people that know what I can do, the more people that are out there that can talk and be part of my, sell for me, right? Because with design, someone's got to know a guy that can do it. And the more that I become that guy for more people, is growth for me. And there's no way I couldn't do that without the network that I have.
And you mentioned something that reminded me of a premise that the baseball coach used to say. And what I heard you say was those small wins can turn into big wins. But the baseball coach used to talk to people about swinging for the fences. So that every time they get up to bat, they're trying to get a home run. And sometimes it's not about the home run. It's getting those consistent base hits, getting those quick wins that are good, solid wins that can grow into the outcome you want. So you can win a game big by just being consistent, getting strong hits versus hitting for the fences, right?
And that comes out of building trust, right? When they trust that you're there for the small things.
Exactly.
And most of design, right? I've been doing this for 18, 19 years now. Most of the work that I've done is small work, right? It's not in the scale, but you have to be there and be open and be receptive and still do your best job, because those big opportunities come.
Absolutely.
When they see that you're there, you're sticking it through,
right.
People notice, and perception, and being willing to take on those projects with the same attitude,
right.
Makes a big difference. And your willingness to do it, whatever it is, people begin to trust you for the kind of little bit bigger, and being aware of that process. Right. People say, "Oh, I've been doing this for so long, they should be giving me this big project now." But being strategic about it and say, "Let's try something a little bit bigger." Right. Let's build upon this versus jumping to the top floor and being taking control of all the creative. It's about the journey of it and accepting it and being ready for it and planning it out.
Right. Kyle, this has been a pleasure. Black Shepherd Strategies, congratulations. You're an absolutely amazing leader with a great business. You've been quoted in USA Today. You've been recognized for various different awards, especially even in your early days. I think you mentioned an award in college, but congratulations to you. How can someone find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably my primary social platform. So Kyle Bogucki, just search me up on LinkedIn. BlackShepherdStrategies.com. We just launched a new landing page.
Nice.
And then KyleBogucki.com is sort of my resume. So I have no other socials than that. But if you just search Kyle Bogucki, there's only two of us. I'm the other guy. So should be pretty easy to find.
Kyle, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Let's stay connected. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Stay ahead of the curve. Subscribe right now. We will see you at the next episode.